the open network for digital commerce and the future of platforms. Please just give us 1 minute as we get settled, as people come onto the system. Initially, we are going to ask that non-speakers put themselves on mute and stay off video. We will have an opportunity towards the end of the conversation to allow for questions and answers. And so we will just get going in 30 seconds as people join. Well, wonderful. Let me start in earnest as people join in the background. This is the USIBC e-commerce briefing. We are really excited here today to have an opportunity to talk with 3 advisors to the government of India on the open network for digital commerce. As background, as you know, my name is Jay Gullish and I will moderate this session today. I lead USIBC's digital economy activities. I want to reference a few folks on the line here. I see Ed DeSanto, who is from American Tower, who is on the USIBC global board. I see some other USIBC digital leaders. I want to thank everybody for their time and support. Today's conversation is on e-commerce, which I think is a critical element of the U.S.-India trade relationship, but also in the digital environment. It is said that e-commerce is trade and trade is global, and so e-commerce goes global. And I think there's a lot of really interesting topics that we want to raise this year. But for today's conversation, I want to start with an introduction of our guests and really appreciate their joining us. I'm going to start with you, Anjali, and introduce yourself. I'm going to introduce you. Anjali Bansal is the founder of Avana Capital, and she really is one of India's thought leaders. I'm going to point to some Indian publications that have articulated that she's one of the most powerful women in Indian business. And just kind of knowing what she's done and interacted with her in the past, she's a true champion for the sector. She's really interested in entrepreneurship and supporting rural development in the startup community. We're really excited to have you here today, ma'am. I'm also going to thank you. I'm also going to introduce. Thank you. Sorry, there was some background noise here. So Arvin Gupta is a man who almost needs no introduction. I could give you the official bio, but I actually know Arvin personally. He is a true champion of the U.S.-India technology corridor. He looks at things really long-term and how the United States and India are so integrated and synergistic. And I always enjoy the opportunity to speak with him because he brings a different perspective to the overall corridor. And most currently, he is, I guess, founder and leads the Digital India Foundation. He's obviously worked in politics and government as well. And so I'm really excited to have him here. And thank you, Arvind, for your willingness to talk with the USIBC membership. Last but not least is T. Koshi, who is previously served as a senior partner at Ernst & Young, and really has a long-term experience in sort of tax and finance and some of the technical aspects of the digital economy. He is currently leading the initiative to establish the Open Network for Digital Commerce, and we're really excited to have him here today. I should have mentioned that both Arvind and Anjali are advisors to the ONDC, and it's an initiative that we're here today just to learn about. So just to set up the structure of our conversation, I'm going to try to talk less and not more. I am going to introduce the speakers. I will ask them a question, and then towards the end, we are going to have an opportunity for questions and answers from our membership. This call, I should note, is being recorded. And if you do have a question, raise your hand or put it into the chat box and we will get to it. So my first question is actually for all three, and I'm going to go in reverse of the way I've introduced you. So it'll be Koshi, Arvind, and Anjali. There's been a lot of discussion and a lot of excitement about the ONDC and what it means, not only for e-commerce, but, larger, in the digital economy. I'm going to ask you each to kind of share how you came to the ONDC initiative and what's the background of why you're investing your time and energy into that. So I'm going to turn to you, Koshi, first. What brought you to ONDC and why is it so important?
Thank you, Jay, and thank you for this opportunity to be here today. As you saw from my introduction, for the past many years, I have been working extensively in the area of population scale problems and solving them using digital technologies, and that gave me enormous confidence and comfort. It's been in the area from capital market to UID. I believe when I saw the initiative that is taking place in the area of open protocol for moving away from a platform-based approach to a network-based approach, I found it as an exciting new way of transforming the commerce in India. And that's when, on account of my past association on many of this project like this, I was sort of pulled in, and I realized that it can truly transform the possibility of commerce in India and help it drive expanded reach all across the country on one side and drive innovation from small and medium enterprises. And that's the reason we all of us jumped into this. Over to you.
Thank you. Turning to Arvin, sort of what's your experience and what brought you to the ONDC initiative?
Well, Jay, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure always to speak to USIBC. And today I'm with two esteemed friends and colleagues, Anjali and Koshi. Anjali is a fearless leader, by the way, so I'll come to that later on. But this is, my work post my stint in my time in Silicon Valley has been devoting a lot of time and attention to policy, public policy in India, digital public policy primarily. And then, since the Prime Minister Modi's government has been in power, to how we can take the whole Digital India platform to empower people and citizens of India. The approach that India has taken, and I've been part of that whole India Stack initiative and movement. It's all of us are volunteers there, as we call ourselves, where we have taken and shown, at Koshi used the word population scale, how population scale technologies and systems used as digital public goods can really transform society and can also really make sense for all 3 or 4 stakeholders, including the government, the startups, the businesses, and society at large. So that actually set up the template, I think, for setting up a lot more digital public goods platforms. And what started with the Aadhaar stack or the India stack is now like caught on in the correct sense of viral form in many other systems or many other technologies. The ONDC is one such initiative. And after my stint with the government of India at MyGov, I got pulled into this to add my perspective. And I think this is a very exciting team. And the time all have worked during the COVID lockdowns and pandemics and waves, and still we've been able to achieve a lot. And that's really the way I got pulled in. And so, this is a startup. I always say it's the most difficult thing to do is to do a startup within the government. And so this is like the 9th or 10th startup that we are doing within the government. And we hope it will be a super success like the other initiatives that we have on Aadhaar or UPI and everything else, MyGov. So thank you.
Thank you, Arvind. I really appreciate that background. So turning to you, ma'am, Anjali, what brought you to the ONDC? Why do you view this as important and something you're willing to volunteer and invest your time in?
So first of all, thank you very much, Jay and USIBC for this is a very important forum. I'm delighted to be here. Since half my life is in the US anyways, I think of this as a very natural corridor. And delighted to be on this platform together with my dear friends and colleagues, Arvind and Koshi. So this was, I think this is an idea whose time has come. And this was bound to happen. We are just fortunate to have had the opportunity to actually join in and contribute and help make this happen. We've talked a little bit about population scale digitization. I think India's biggest innovation, we talk a lot about India as the next startup nation, third largest number of unicorns. But actually, one of the biggest innovations out of India is the creation of public, private, and public digital infrastructure. It started with Aadhaar, 1.3 billion people with a unique biometric ID, 1 billion people with a bank account. So identification, authentication, formalization of finance. Then there was the creation of India Stack. So UPI, seamless, click of a button payments, anyone to anywhere. So this was bound to happen. In some ways, this is a UPI moment for e-commerce in India. It is the democratization of access. And by the way, I'm sure many of you know, India has the largest digital network, the lowest cost of data, and consequently, so many factors were actually in place. So the beginning of ONDC is, if you recall, the first wave of COVID, way back in March, April 2020, when for a very large population that was under lockdown, it became essential to create supply chains running for grocery and essentials in containment zones. And a bunch of us were pulled into these very collaborative efforts with government. And one of the unique things about the current administration is their openness to ideas and their absolute sort of enthusiasm for using technology to solve problems. And so a bunch of us got involved. We were pulled into various task forces, and the task force I happened to be on, we said, okay, how do we make sure that what is known as grocery or kirana is able to deliver to the Indian household? And we found that the bottleneck is not really the movement of goods, but the last mile and the digitization of the kirana itself. So India, of course, is a large population of medium and small enterprises, most of whom have been slow to digitize. So one of the big outcomes, positive outcomes of COVID has been the acceleration of digital adoption by various segments, including MSMEs. So this started as what we called e-kirana. Eventually, we found a protocol that was an open protocol that could connect anyone to anyone. And then, honestly, the idea just kept developing. We had tremendous support and championship from the government. A bunch of us in the private sector were involved. We brought in more startups to add ideas. And then, lo and behold, it kind of grew organically. Arvind was, we were very, very grateful to Arvind to join the sort of the steering committee and the advisory council. And then it was a sheer masterstroke of luck that when it needed to happen, Koshi was there and he took charge. And since then, there has been no looking back.
Great. Well, thank you. You've sort of provided the perfect segue into the next portion of the conversation. I want to get a little background of the origins of ONDC itself. We want to get an idea of where we are now and also understand where we're going. So, Anjali, maybe you can provide a little bit more background on the origins of ONDC. Koshi, maybe you could then share where is the pilot and process now. And then Arvind, if you want to kind of close out, where ONDC is going, that would be really useful. So first and foremost, over to you, Anjali.
Sure. So from the beginnings as the e-Kirana project and then getting set up as a government project, really, with an advisory council and a public-private partnership model, the identification of an open network protocol. So you have to think about ONDC, and Koshi will go into a lot more detail, but you have to think about ONDC as a network of platforms. So today, if you are transacting on a digital platform, whether it is and I won't take names here necessarily, but any big e-commerce, you have to be registered as a buyer and a seller on the same platform. Here, the idea is like on email, right? You can be on Gmail, Outlook email, or Hotmail, and everyone can talk to everyone. So the underlying idea of ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce, is an open protocol that allows anyone to talk to anyone, to transact with anyone, and thus creates both the governance framework, the trust mechanism for transaction, linkage to payment, and fundamentally identity. So that's how it grew. We have set up now, happy to share that the company has actually been incorporated. It is set up as a public-private partnership. It's not inside the government, it's outside the government. But at the same time, it has been set up as a not-for-profit so that it really becomes a public utility. Koshi is the chief advisor to ONDC and the CEO designate. And there's a very, very strong team that has been developed to build this out. Here you can think about, it can be as simple as, let's say you're a home-based baker. Home-based baker can list their product on ONDC, be discovered and be bought. Similarly, on the other hand, it could be a farmer producer organization that actually has no way of linking to the market. They can link into ONDC and also be discovered by buyers. So I'm simplifying it extensively, and I will turn over to Koshi in a second to actually take us through really where we are today and the number of pilots that are being run. We've had 2 successful hackathons and lots of new products and ideas being developed. It is an open API platform, so it enables it for any number of businesses to actually develop new models and ride on it. So think about it as a digital highway. So then when a small business wants to go digital, they don't have to build their own road. There is a highway that exists. They actually have to build their vehicle and get on the highway. Koshi, over to you.
Thank you. Anjali put the whole thing in beautifully in context. So let me just go a little more specific. First and foremost, as she explained, it is built on an open source underlying protocol. So there is no exclusive IPR owned by any entity, either in government or in private sector. And it gives us a foundation to build the necessary interfaces for commerce. And what are we doing? Anjali explained how it can, various platforms can talk to each other. The fundamental principles on which this network is being developed are based on 2 components. One is interoperability, which means any network, any platform can talk with any platform. So here's a huge impact. What it means is that I could be in one network and you could be in another network as a buyer, and I could be in another network as a seller. Still, we can talk to each other. Second big component is the idea of unbundling. Unbundling is about the components of transaction to be broken into its element. Both this together make a huge impact on the way business is done. Let me go a little more in detail. Today, when we have any large platform in India or anywhere in the world, there are very competent, brilliant entities who come and set up a complete end-to-end integrated 5-star solution. They have a buyer application where any buyers can come and say what he wants to buy, and the buyer application will take you through the seller application, which is already there in the same platform, and arrange for logistics and warehouse everything. So it's a complete end-to-end 5-star solution. And so because of this end-to-end solution, it means that anybody who wants to provide e-commerce solution should be able to provide exactly the same. If I'm a small, in India, if I want to be create a digital platform and I want to do e-commerce, I also have to have a mechanism to get as many buyers as possible. So either I have to be part of some of these large, established players, or I am nowhere. So when it is interoperable and unbundled, imagine the buyer side, any entity who has an ability or who already has a large set of buyers for giving any service, they can add commerce as an additional thing. Okay, they don't have to worry about getting sellers in place or logistics players in place, because if their application, which is offering their buyers a buying option, is ONDC protocol enabled, that buyers can discover any seller in the network and vice versa. Let's say there is an entity who set up seller application to make their catalog visible in the network. There's only one time adaptation of the ONDC protocol needed. He is visible to all platforms. Today, otherwise, if I have to be in e-commerce, either he has to, if he is to be there in 3 platforms, he has to develop processes and technology and everything and interfaces for each of them separately. So the fundamental grounding force is about interoperability and unbundling. Having realized as a foundational principle and got the open source protocol available, which is also developed by a set of geeks who did the same work in UPI, etc. Available, we built on that. And again, as Arvin told earlier, the whole team, like Anjali, Arvind, etc., took the a startup project, incubated under QCI, which is a body in India, which is a part of the Ministry of Commerce. They said, while they all recognized the need of setting up a focused entity and said that we will go around set up the focused entity, they said, well, it takes time, but let's start with getting the project up and running. So a group of us came together like a true startup, and under the incubation of the Quality Council of India, which is headed by Adil Zanulbai, and we have started doing a lot of initiative work. We already have the protocol well established. We have a large number of about 25 to 30 entities who are working to be onboarded onto our setup. And to demonstrate it, we did 2 hackathons. The first hackathon was to demonstrate that a buyer from one network can deal from another seller from another network and get it delivered by the logistics provider by the third network. So we wanted to show first time in the world such a thing is possible and made it possible. And it happened in December. Subsequently, we did a grand hackathon where we have about 130 entities coming together, developing 2 kinds of things. One is showing much more powerful integration, and another showing much innovation for each components. It could be for Indic language support for the buyer side or seller side. It could be creating a small utility for small mom and pop shop to have the catalog digitized and made it available. Similarly, about 14 such very state-of-the-art and really cool solutions being made by these people. And the people who participated are from very small entities, startup who had started probably a few months ago, to established players like Microsoft and Paytm and so on and so forth. So what it again shows is that when you unbundle and make it interoperable, it stimulates, encourages innovation to the core, and it is going to be an explosion of innovation and a very active participation. So all those things are all come together, and we are sort of confident that by end of the month or the beginning of the next month, we can start, we can launch the commercial regular transaction as a pilot, and then keep on enhancing, to reach the whole of the, the country probably in few months' time. In the meantime, we have already established our company, as Anjali explained, and we are getting a very powerful team expanded to, to be the best kind of people to make it the best place to work, to make sure that this is a true innovation which will become an example to the rest of the world. This is like where I want to tell you where we are, and I'm sure Arvind will be able to share the vision that we are creating for the future. Over to you, Arvind.
I think Arvin may have frozen. Arvind, over to you.
Arvind, can you hear us?
Arvind,
you're on mute.
Yeah, slightly me, but I'll try to tell me if you cannot hear me.
We can hear you now.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think Jay, 2 parts to what you asked, and I think Anjali and Koshi have given you a good on where we are, and what was the background and what all we're trying to achieve. See, you also have to see this in the context of the second part of your question, which is the future of platforms. We in India are now doing at least 8 or 9 population scale platforms. Health is one of them. the National Digital Health Mission, the commerce platform, which is just not for e-commerce, by the way. It could be mobility, it could be food, everything can be done with this. Any transaction literally can be done with this, because it's like what you send in an email is your choice. So anytime you're doing a transaction which is buying or selling any product or any service could be transacted over this open platform. Three, we are building the travel stacks, the skill stacks, the voice stack for India, which is a deep technology initiative that we are doing. So there is a multiple things happening, which is a resultant of the first few initiatives of the PPP model, the digital public goods model, that have become super successful. And in the process, if I can use the word in double quotes, everybody has tasted so much of success. As I said, the 4 different stakeholders, that they see not only just success from a value creation. For example, UPI, it is estimated, has created value of upwards of 150 to 200 billion dollars in different companies that it has incubated and innovated on top of. Similarly, to the government, UPI itself has saved almost 20 basis points of the GDP every year by just doing transactions, the direct benefits transactions through a direct gateway. So I think as we go forward, while on one side we will keep doing digitization, making sure the 140 million consumer base currently, which is transacting on e-commerce and on payments, is only goes to the 700 million internet users that we have. So we only got 20% of users transacting today. The intent is that becomes as high as possible and really becomes one of the biggest democratic numbers out there in the world. So I think the DNA has now been set up where this last, I do want to leave that there is this also brings about some of the issues that you mentioned, Jay. There is, and I think Koshi and Anjali can also comment on this as a conversation pointer, is that not only this will showcase technology and the interoperability and the debundling, as Koshi explained, but this will also showcase the policy sandboxing. What are the fair policies that can then be embedded into the system, and a lot of policies can really be embedded using technology. And if some policies are breaking, for example, a small policy as you cannot be transacting more than 25% to one particular seller or one particular buyer. Those kind of things can be embedded now in the system. So while this is separately, this is very far away from the e-commerce policy, and I know you had a question on that, but the implications of any policy and to be codified into the platform are there. These provisions are there in our system, in our interoperable system. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. I'm going to invite our members now to start raising their hands for questions or type them into the box. But I have an initial question. It just jumps out at me. Is this an optional opportunity for platforms to join, where you're providing some functionality that maybe startups and others want to engage in? Or is it going to be more of a requirement, such as sort of is emerged with the National Payments Corporation of India, that digital payments have to go through this particular platform? So is this mandated, or is this sort of optional and helping the development of the larger ecosystem?
So it's definitely not mandated. It's truly open architecture, open platform. So as an early stage investor, I am delighted, because what it means is, just like after UPI, after NPCI UPI, there have been high single-digit unicorn models that got created because there was UPI. Pre-UPI, they would have actually needed to embed and create payment systems in their own platforms. Now they don't need to. A new business can get set up. Payment is a no-brainer. They don't even have to think about it. They just plug into UPI and payments are done. So as an investor, early stage VC, I am super excited, because I know that on top of ONDC, many new businesses will get built. It is not mandatory at all, but I think market forces will prevail. It will create more competition, better for consumer, new innovation, and why not? It will create better value for all consumers.
Great. Anjali, as a follow-up question, I encourage any of the advisors. Sir, go ahead, Koshi.
I just wanted to compliment to what Anjali said. While there is not going to be any legal mandate at all, but what we believe is that the way the architecture is shaping and the way the people are responding, it will become a market compulsion and market mandate. Not because any government authorities ask them to do, but it will become a compulsion for people to join. And that's a kind of trend that we are already seeing with the discussion that we had to begin small.
You know, it's not even fully launched yet. And there was a hackathon held over the weekend, last weekend. There were 130 companies that participated.
So I'll add something to this. This is what happens once you start, showing the proof of the pudding. When we first did the UPI hackathon, way back in 2016, I think it was August 2016, which is now like a distant memory. We had difficulty getting 10 participants, right? And I still remember getting and similarly was experienced in 2015 with the Aadhaar hackathons that we started doing. I got a call from somebody saying they are going to hack the system. And people were not even familiar with the concept that, how we could do hackathons. So today we've come a long way from there. It is being encouraged and led by the ministers and the, and the departments, and as well as then the startups, 135 plus startups and other innovators have been, working on top of it. So, what I'm saying, the journey has come a long way. Similarly, in between, we had announced the account aggregators, the OSIN networks. If you see all of them, the progress has been typically like a hockey stick curve. I mean, if there were 10 initial participants in UPI, the account aggregator had 40, and now we have 135. So you can imagine the growth and the excitement around this one.
Great, thank you. As a follow-up, we got a question from the participants, and it's how the ONDC would work with consumer protection. We know that other platforms in e-commerce have certain requirements, whether it's on counterfeits, whether it's on returned items, whether it's on cybersecurity or other consumer welfare policies. As sort of a neutral platform, would ONDC be responsible for all of that?
I will let
me just give you. Arvin, do you want to say something, or shall I just give my thoughts in the first instance?
I will just leave one thought with Jay. Again, it's the same thing. And I think a lot of your participants will appreciate what I'm saying. If somebody sends a wrong email, is the email to be blamed, or is the sender or the receiver to be blamed if you click on it? So just keep that principle in mind. What ONDC is at the end of it is a protocol, is a set of interoperable APIs and systems which enable any app to talk to any app, buyer or seller. And the seller can have his or her own app. The buyer can work on any system. Could be a messenger, could be a website, could buy from in future through a WhatsApp plugin, a chat plugin. So could be anything. But what we are enabling is the protocol in between. Yes, all those rules will still be applicable, because there is a consumer protection angle, there is a grievance redressal, and that all will still happen. But I'll let Koshi comment on it in detail. But the principle is different. We are not the buyer or the seller. We register people. We maintain a registry of the sellers. We maintain. Any buyer can provide the credentials through another app also. and then really buy from him. So.
Okay, so let me just add to something. Arvin beautifully explained the basic principle, but let me just put in the context of what ONDC is going to do in its core functions. So the way we look at this, ONDC has 3 core functions. One is of a developmental function. The developmental function has 2 components. One is the technology, getting the rails up and running. Second thing is to help the various participants to be onboarded. There again, we will be having a lot of focus on the small and medium enterprises to give hand-holding because they don't have the capability. So we need to give them some hand-holding support, and the big guys can come by themselves. The role of a developmental role. Second is that like a self-regulating organization, SRO, because it's a community coming together. So when the community is coming together, there has to be certain discipline and process. One is who are the people who are going to be admitted. There's a way in which they're going to be admitted to do some minimum KYC to make sure that there is a testing of their applications and this compliance to the protocol is embedded. All those things to be done. So there is a how are they going to be onboarded? That be a policy. Second is that how do they be? So how do they onboarded and how do they behave as a group? Because in any community, when you come together, there has to be a community-wide policy. We are not a regulating entity. Regulator is the government, but the community operator coming together like a self-regulatory organization, they have to put in place the network policies, which will be continuously evolving. And then again, as Arvind explained earlier, this is a very powerful protocol that enables transaction level control. It means that we will be able to make policies machine readable to a great extent. So only very few of them will not be machine readable. It means that the monitoring and tracking and public display of this become very, very possible, and sharing of it. And the third thing is that we will also provide enablement as like a community manager, provide network-wide reputation. Today, I have a reputation only in one network. I have a reputation in different network. We will be able to make it possible to make the network-wide reputation visible, which is strong, and also portable for any seller. Just because he has moved from one platform to another, his reputation doesn't get lost. So these kind of elements will happen. And plus, now that the community coming together and a set a policy and they have an agreement how they will behave themselves, of course, they will be controlled by the rules of the country and there will be enough mechanism to address any violations of the rule. At the same time, these things will be possible to be tracked, and there could be dispute that is coming between the parties. So we will establish necessary dispute resolution mechanism, including online dispute resolution, which is a philosophy that has been already brought out by our Niti Aayog, which is our highest planning body, and also RBI, who has also came similar thing for the financial sector. So we will build on that so that the community has an orderly behavior. So we are not policemen, but we are enabler. And the third is, of course, we will also providing what you call service delivery, which is onboarding and certification and so on and so forth. So collectively, this becomes the mandate of the organization, and that is what is going to build up the good business practices, and you will see coexistence of different kinds of clusters of buyers and sellers, which different priorities and different expectations of standards and so on and so forth. So it's like you will have 5-star chain and you will have 3-star chains. Both of them will have their clients and their customers. And same customer may at some point expect a 5-star service, then they will go to those kind of places. And all this network-wide reputation will be available and continuously trackable. And that is how we believe a discipline will come into this network. And it is not just a laissez-faire situation where anybody can do anything and just run away.
Thank you, Koshi. Following up on your question, I mean, I heard you say that the ONDC as an organization is going to take on some of know your customer requirements. There's going to be some sort of dispute resolution. You will handle some of the onboarding. So it sounds to me like you're starting to take on some of the regulatory compliances that are required in, for broader, platforms, so I presume that in the future, the ONDC would take on some of those breaches, returns, taxation, and things like that. that in the absence of another platform, you are the platform and would take those on. Am I understanding that correctly? You're on mute.
We are not going to be regulator. Regulator is the government. We are
It's
like
not the
we said, a
regulator.
network manager.
Yeah.
We are not enforced. We are not. We are only putting a good practices of how the network members should behave among themselves. So
Right,
the
but this is
regulation and enforcement means for the whole
right?
industry, which is not what we are going to do. We are saying how the members will have to behave.
So I'm just trying to figure out, because in the current environment, you have a buyer and a seller and a platform, and the platform has certain responsibilities, including things like taxes and returns and cyber breach notifications and things of that nature. So in the ONDC, you're going to provide that same platform role, because there won't be another platform. It'll be buyer, seller, and then you guys in the middle, right? I'm just trying to figure this out to see if there's other, what happens with consumer affairs if it's just a buyer and seller and you're in the middle and there's no other platform.
Arvind, you want to take something, or should I? Arvind, you are.
You please go ahead. I'll add to that.
See, Jake, this is not a platform in the middle. This is a network, like Anjali explained earlier. It is like Google Gmail talking to Outlook Express. So SMTP is enabling that. So each of the platform and service provider will have to comply with the rules. What we are saying is that we will enable that the buyer and seller will be able to have a digitally signed contract between them together, making each of them responsible, and their behavior is available to be tracked to the relevant people to take the necessary action. We are not enforcers. That's why I use the word SRO, self-regulating organization, which is there in every industry.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions from the audience, and we have a few e-commerce companies asking how e-commerce marketplaces get involved in what you're doing.
Jay, I just presented something, if that's of interest. This is the nature that you can see at the ONDC website also, that there is this is in the middle part is the ONDC. The everything else is the existing buyers and seller applications. So just keep that in mind.
Okay. So how would an e-commerce company get involved in the ONDC? Like, there's existing platforms, they're doing their business now. ONDC is ramping up. My understanding, it's in pilots. It has not gone live. When ONDC goes live, or between now and then, how do e-commerce marketplaces get involved?
So we are already talking to some of these large marketplaces. What we believe is that they don't have to do anything further, that their seller, see, every e-commerce marketplace has their seller side and buyer side. Okay. So what they need to do is that their seller side has to be ONDC protocol enabled, and the buyer side has to be ONDC protocol enabled, which means that their buyers will have the visibility of all the sellers in the network, and the sellers will have the visibility of buyers in the network. So it is their choice, no compulsion. Like you said, that there is no compulsion for them. When they realize that where a market is going to explode. See, Arvind earlier explained, and Arvind and Anjali explained, same thing happened when the UPI started. We had established certain players when working in certain models. They thought that it is going to eat upon them. No, what it did was to make the market 10 times more. Nobody lost anything, and then they realized it is better to be as a part of this larger system. And that is what we are going to expect. Today, the e-commerce penetration in our country is, less than 10% in the retail sector. And when the 10% become 50%, we need all these people coming together. Over to you, Arvind.
So Jay, let me add to what Koshi just said, and this is giving you a little bit of a technical view, that today there's a buyer and seller platform called X. Let's just assume that, and they will continue to do their business. And this X.buyer, X.seller is going to keep selling their products on their platform. But they also register with ONDC and open up their buyers and sellers to our vast network, which basically means their sellers now can sell to all the buyers via the, so if, if there is a buyer who's looking at something, now that buyer need not be on that platform, on that X platform, and can be on any platform. And they can come, or can be directly, I mean, through, as I said, let's say if tomorrow WhatsApp is a platform, they can come via that, make a request, an ONDC request, and it will go out to, based on certain rules, will go out to all. And let's say there are 10 such platforms registered, which are the seller platforms, big and small. It will go out to all the sellers who are selling that item in a geolocation, who can deliver that and give that list to the buyer to choose the 10 products from, and then buy from any of them. This is so this is how, you have a couple of questions in the chat, how e-commerce platforms can participate. They just have to adopt, apart from doing their regular way of doing business, which they will continue doing, hopefully, but also start participating in the in this open network, the ONDC network, and opening up the, participating and opening up their buyers and sellers to follow the protocol.
Great. That's really helpful, Arvind and Koshi. Let me know if I have this right. So if you are a seller, currently you may have a relationship with one or more platforms in order to get to the buyer. So with ONDC, you're an Indian seller, you can go directly to ONDC, and to the extent that you can push your product or service through ONDC. If you are a buyer, you could go to some sort of ONDC website and then see what's on it. If you're a platform, you could choose to add on to the ONDC as to augment your current network. Is that sort of a good understanding of the buyers, the sellers, and the platforms?
Yeah, you're getting there, Jay. You're getting it.
Okay.
Jay,
That's broadly right, Jay. Let me take another example.
Sorry, I'm just adding
please,
one. Incidentally, we are our ONDC website is up and running today, and you will see a lot more reading material and a detailed strategy document, which will sort of help you to sort of appreciate the structural change that is happening in the market. Over to you, Anjali. You have a beautiful example coming.
I have an example coming, which is saying that this is actually expanding the market for everybody. So let's say there is a current digital platform, e-commerce or otherwise, there's a digital platform. They're already digitized, right? So they have a bit of a leg up. This expands both their, as a buyer, this expands the number of sellers they can procure from. If they're a seller, then it expands the number of consumers they can sell to. Now, if it is a non-digitized platform, on ONDC, there are a number of apps being developed that are ONDC compatible that will help digitize. So if let me make this up, right? You are a garment manufacturer in Ludhiana. Today, the garment manufacturer in Ludhiana has no option but to go to the wholesaler and sell his product, and then the wholesaler takes it to some other distributor takes it to the retail market. Now with ONDC, once the garment manufacturer is able to digitize their catalog, that catalog becomes discoverable. So if there is a shop in Greater Kailash, Delhi, or Dadar Market, Mumbai, that wants to buy from that garment, they would never have known who that garment manufacturer is. Now they can actually publish the requirement, find this garment manufacturer, and be able to source from them. Along the way, there will be a logistics supplier who is also a seller of services on the platform. That logistics supplier will supply the in-between logistics, both at the front end and at the delivery end. So all of this is not going to happen overnight, immediately, but that is really the power of this network over a period of time.
No, thank you, Anjali. And so if I understand this correctly, and if I do, I think I represent a lot of people who are just trying to grasp this concept. So if you're a new e-commerce platform, you can opt to use the ONDC network rather than develop a lot of your proprietary activities. That was one sort of thing that you're seeing. Here in the United States, we're starting to see a longer tail of e-commerce platforms. We saw very early on a lot of them and then consolidation, and now we're seeing disaggregation in a longer tail. So you're saying in the Indian context, the newer folks can jump on and immediately leverage ONDC and the standards or open architecture. That's one piece.
Yeah.
And I believe I see nodding head, so I have that correct. The second thing is
and basically get a host of buyers, as Anjali explained. They don't have to scout for individual buyers, and they can just go and the whole set of buyers on ONDC will be available to them.
Great, thank you. One thing, ma'am, you also mentioned a government buyer. Do you foresee that this being something that augments the government e-platforms like the GEM or other buying, or were you just using that as an example, just for clarity's sake?
I actually didn't mention GEM. I was talking about a garment manufacturer, a private garment manufacturer, but now that you mentioned GEM.
I'm sorry, I thought you said government, my apologies.
Garment, it's my terrible Indian accent. It's the garment manufacturer.
But Jay,
it's a good point.
Since you mentioned that, and Anjali was going to, I'm just taking what Anjali was going to say, I think, why not? I mean, we've talked about the 4 stakeholders. If tomorrow, this becomes a viable thing to procure certain goods for the government, the government is one of the biggest purchasers of many products. It can bring about a lot more transparency and price savings. I mean, I'm just making a comment today. It's not something that has been decided. It's not. Why not? I mean, why can't we? It can, of course, it could, of course, be done. Whether the policies and the decisions are in place, that the time will tell. But of course, it can be done.
No, and honestly, it's a choice for GEM to make. If GEM sees value in expanding its seller base, then GEM is actually a buying platform. So GEM as a procurement platform can say, I choose to also be ONDC compatible and expand my universe of potential suppliers. But that's a call GEM will have to take. It's like any other buying platform.
Well, that sounds like another webinar. I want to share with you on behalf of members at USIBC, there's a lot of interest in international e-commerce, where platforms are leveraging vendors, Indian vendors for global platforms, but they may or may not be selling to the Indian market. How do you see ONDC think about some of the international elements of e-commerce?
I can just quickly give my 2 cents, and then Anjali and Kochi can say. It will start with India. It will start solving sort of bigger societal challenges of India, making sure that from Arunachal to Jaisalmer to Kashmir to Kanyakumari, that I am not saying all the pin codes out of the 18,000 pin codes are not covered by the current logistics providers, but or the current e-commerce providers. Just that it will create a new market, given that it is going to be very democratized and no rent seeking will happen on it. So it is it will start solving the problem within India. But as has happened with UPI, again, great old UPI example, it has slowly started moving out of India, right? So Bhutan, Singapore, the Middle East, so that it will happen eventually. That's the natural growth. And the PM yesterday gave a mantra: solve for India, solve for the world. So I think that's the rule that we will follow over here. So.
Great. There's a question, I think it's fairly tactical, on payments. How is ONDC going to handle the payments piece of that, of the e-commerce transaction?
UPI.
So okay. the CEO of NPCI is on the advisory council.
That's something that is taken care of.
Okay. Great. What's next? Where are we going here? Where is ONDCI? What's sort of the timelines? Where can industry get involved to support? And I guess I'll turn that over to Koshi.
Let me ask, before I jump into that one, I saw a question that we haven't answered here. Is it only B2B or B2C, or it is both B2B and B2C? It is going to be, in a layered network. So buyer and seller, it will work, and we believe that it will be significant amount of B2B coming, especially coming from small and medium enterprises who are essentially today suppliers to the big enterprises and so on and so forth. And the second thing, as I told you, we are going to start in a small way, probably by next month. And our hope is that it will be available. I mean, when you start small in the sense, make sure the merchants are available in 3 cities, 2 large and 1 small city, to demonstrate that it works. Because network is finally national, and the key thing is that we need to have the merchants who are enabled. So now we will work with the large enterprises, small and large enterprises and agencies all across to make the merchants ready be available. And we hope that by end of the year, we will see huge numbers happening. And our vision that you will see in our strategy document, which is already will be published by tomorrow in our website, which says that we have put some reasonably ambitious target for the next 5 years, where the current level of 3-4 items. One is consumer penetration, the penetration, and the prevalence across the geography. 75% or 80% of the geography should be fully covered. So we have put some where the levels are going to be multiples, not gradual increase. That's the kind of ambition numbers we have put across, and we believe that we will be able to sort of manage it, building on the strength and success of some other foundational platform. Like somebody asked, where is the payment? Payment is already cracked. See, finally, commerce is of what? Goods and services on one side and payment on the other side. Payment is cracked. Now we are enabling digital, cracking of the digital commerce, and that will complement each other and make a big difference. And that's why we feel that we are going to see an exponential growth in the coming months. And we are already started talking to, you said when can industry can start talking? They can start talking tonight or tomorrow morning. We are already talking to about 30, 40 of them, big and small. And we believe that that number is just going to increase the coming.
Right. Well, thank you. It's always the sign of a good conversation when time runs out really quickly, and we've actually approached the full hour, and yet I feel like I want to have more conversations and more questions. That said, I'm going to give you each an opportunity to for a final thought, and then I'll say some closing remarks. So over to you, Anjali, for some final thoughts on what's next, where to go, and how USIBC and our members can work with you.
Thank you. There's one question here that came in at the end. Will ONDC allow other modes of payments beyond UPI? For sure. It's an open protocol. If there are other modes of payments that are convenient and that buyers and sellers want to use, for sure. Where do we go from here? I think you would have heard from all of us by now the excitement and the very realistic optimism we have about the potential that this platform brings. It will truly democratize access to e-commerce. We keep talking about e-commerce, but I think the 80% of the power of this is actually beyond the B2C commerce. It's a lot of it is in the MSME to MSME, the B2B commerce areas, making it much easier for businesses to digitize and for new businesses to get created on top of this. So the future is digital and the future is now.
Thank you. Koshi, over to you, sir.
What we are going to, for us, what is needed is, now we have been preaching and we have been talking a lot of PPTs. For us, the way when I look at the future as the guy who is to deliver with a team is get down and get working and get as many participants as possible. And what I see from the interest that is coming, as I told you, big and small, I can see excitement and conviction and participation. And for me, it is going to be a developmental role in the coming months that is going to really transform the commerce in India. It's a structural change and humongous amount of innovation. As I told you the other day, I saw some question that is coming. For each components, you will see innovations coming. because they are all, like I said, unbundled, and that innovation will bring about newer and newer business models and solutions coming. That's what we see as future, a time of innovation, a total transformation of the commerce sector.
Thank you. And Arvin Gupta, the final word, opportunities to collaborate with not only the e-commerce community, USIBC, the United States piece. Any final thoughts, sir?
So this is, in the approach of open innovation, I think everybody should. This is a call to action and request that everybody should think of this as an ally to them. This is not something that's going to. This is only going to expand their businesses, as we have said in the past, the UPI has done. So please do work with us, ally with us at the right time, so you can have the first mover advantage in your business. Logistics players, payments players, buyers, sellers, discovery platforms, food, mobility. We welcome all, and that's where this is going to be a very fair, very transparent, network and a system. And lastly, this is something which is being built with privacy at the core of it. It's privacy by design. And it's, so all the good principles of building the right policies, as I said, are already being codified as we speak. So please participate and ally with us. We are not competing with your business. We are there to augment your business, to increase your business, and to make sure that if 140 million people today in India are buying or selling things, that number can soon become 500 million and maybe 700 million in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Well, wonderful. One of the things I really love about this job is that we get to pull in true innovators and thought leaders to the fore, like Anjali, like Koshi, like Arvind. I want to thank you on behalf of USIBC and our members. This was a fantastic conversation. We were very much trying to understand, the initiative and where it goes. As you know, everyone on this call is supportive of enabling the digital economy, increasing US-India commerce and trade, and the underlying policies that support that objective. So thank you very much. I would be more than happy to connect you with any of the participants or vice versa. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. This session was recorded, and so we can make it available for others. And I'd be happy to make any follow-on connections as we go forward. And then lastly, I'd like to invite you back to the USIBC platform in the future. Please keep us informed as the ONDC initiative evolves. We'd be happy to work with you and your teams to discuss or conduct other sorts of interactions that help us move forward. With that, I'm going to ask everybody to stay safe, stay warm, and be well. And thank you again. Bye now.
Thank you.